You're about to watch just one of 10 learning modules from my full Dark Melodic Trap course. And I'm not gatekeeping, so you can access the course in its entirety in my free music creators community. In the free community, you'll be able to access the templates, the sounds, the presets, and the effects so that you could follow along and have a good foundation to start off with. And if you like what you learned from the course, then link up with me live in my live Music Creators Academy. In the Academy, we'll have live Q&A sessions for direct feedback and review with beat critiques. You'll also get access to music and business workshops for you to start growing and developing and scaling your own online presence. To join, just click the link in the description. If you're out here trying to find new special chords to thinking that that's going to get the tone that you're looking for, stop it. That's not it. You're probably just running into this problem right here that's keeping you from realizing you actually have a lot of chords available. You just aren't playing them in the right way. So that's why you're always looking for new chords that you don't actually need. So here are the exact chords that you're going to be using that you'll create variations off of. Inside of the scale, to create your chords, you're just going to select any of the notes within the scale and then skip every other note within the scale. Up to 3 notes, your 3-note chord. If I were to start on the very first note here, E, we'd go E, we would skip this note, then go to G, skip this note, and then go to B. Here we have the 7 chords within the E minor scale. And to get that, all we did was just select any of the notes and then skip every other note within the scale. Any major or minor scale, that's how you would get every triad within those scales in its main form. Now, here's the part that no one points out when it comes to making sure that you are not going to fall in the trap of making your dark melody or your dark chord progression no longer sound dark. The most forbidden chord in the entire scale. In every minor scale, you want to avoid the 3rd chord in the minor scale. In this case, it's G major, and you want to eliminate playing that ever. So that's already going to save you a whole bunch of time in terms of exploring your foundation, exploring your chord progressions by making sure that you don't play this. That's your E minor chord versus this G chord. Sounds happy versus dark. You want to avoid that. Now, there are other chords in here that are major chords, but we're going to use those to our advantage in the scale so that it still keeps our dark feeling. So for example, this second to last chord right here is a major chord. You could start with the major chord even. So you don't even have to start with E minor by using these pattern of notes, because what I teach is just using the pattern of notes, not to worry about playing in E minor. So now you have to start with the E minor chord. No, you just need to know the pattern of notes. And then from there, you can do whatever you want, as long as you eliminate that 3rd chord and eliminate one specific note in the scale that you never want to play. I'm going to show that to you. But first, I want to show you that with these chords, even if you play a major chord first, you can still create an entirely dark chord progression from starting with just this major chord right here. Sounds happy, right? How is that going to turn dark? Watch. By surrounding that major chord with the dark chords inside of the minor scale, you automatically make that progression darker, even though we start with a major chord, because now it's in context of the full story of that chord progression. But here's how we take that to the next level. So here's where people get tripped up, because then they think, okay, you have this chord, you have this chord, skip that chord, you have this chord, this chord, this chord, and this chord. And then they start trying to incorporate all these chords, and that's not how dark trap works. Dark trap typically has 1 or 2 chords, but they're able to create chord progressions off of the inversions of those two chords. What are inversions? Inversions give you the ability to play throughout the keyboard, create more interest, even though you're playing the same notes over and over again. It's delivering a different tone, and it's delivering a different overall feel, even though you're playing the same chord over and over again. So instead of choosing 4 of these different chords and trying to make a progression out of that, which you can, what I recommend doing if you're really trying to stay dark and make traditional dark trap, create inversions, and then within those inversions, you're going to use the notes in between your chords. Sometimes you'll reach outside of those chords. So let me show you what this looks like. We'll use E as an example because that's the main chord that you'll be doing this with more often than not. Your very first chord inside of your minor scale. So like I said, inversions are literally the same exact notes, except they are placed differently within the keyboard. So we're going to create 2 variations of this chord. I'm going to hold Control, click and drag, then hold Shift, click and drag, hold Shift, click and drag again. Then I'm going to hold Control and click drag, select the very first note or the top note there. And then I'm going to hold Control and then down arrow for that to move down an octave. I'm going to do the opposite with this bottom note, hold Control and up to move that up an octave. Now these are the different variations of this same exact chord that you could play up and down the keyboard. But what do those sound like? Notice already you're having this sound that sounds like a progression, but it's the same chords over and over again. Hard not to make a dark melody on top of that, right? That is some of the secret sauce that a lot of people don't cover when it comes to keeping your melodies dark, keeping your beat dark, and actually trying to achieve trap beats that actually sound like trap. Because y'all be making these chord progressions and melodies that we know what you're trying to do, but you're not nailing it when it comes to keeping the atmosphere and keeping the tone. This is one of the methods right here that is going to allow you to make progression after progression without thinking about, oh, let me add in this chord, let me grab this chord, let me look up new chords because I'm running out of chords. When all this time, really, you could have just been playing the chords that you already know, and you just needed to switch those up and then move in between those inversions, because a lot of people will play inversions as a one-off. For example, as a pianist, a lot of people will play an inversion just to have better access with their fingers, because certain chords will be easier to play depending on what chord came before it. When it comes to trap beats, inversions have a different purpose. You use inversions to keep the progression going while maintaining the atmosphere. So you're creating movement, you're creating intrigue within the beat, something interesting within the beat, even though you're playing the same chords over and over again. And then there's other tricks to that too that we're about to get into. Your rhythm, broken chords, which is basically the same thing as arpeggiating, but we're not necessarily repeating the pattern, and we're also not creating an ostinato where it's any notes at all. I'm literally talking about the notes within the chords and then making a melody off of that. So that's different than arpeggiating, because it's not necessarily the same repetition over and over again. You're just finding parts of your melody by doing this. We'll build off of that. So now that you know you could play the same chord up and down the keyboard and actually use that as a part of your progression, here are some additional tips and tricks that will help you go even beyond that.